The darkness of space held many secrets, but none as dangerous as the one floating in the dead system that used to be called Sul. Captain Vex Korath stared at his scanner readings and felt his blood run cold. The massive shape on his screen was impossible. It should not exist. Sir, are you seeing this? Asked his science officer, Dr. Yelan Thess. Her voice shook as she spoke. The readings don't make sense. Korath nodded slowly. His ship, the Dark Talon, was one of the best exploration vessels in the Zenthari fleet. They had come to the Sol system looking for old human artifacts to study. What they found was much more than anyone expected. The object floating before them was huge. It stretched 15 kilometers from front to back. The ship was bigger than any space station Korath had ever seen. Its hull was dark gray metal that seemed to drink in the light from distant stars. Strange markings covered its sides, and Korath could make out symbols that looked like human writing. "How long has it been here?" Korath asked. Dr. Thess checked her instruments again. "The metal shows signs of being in space for about 200 years, sir. That would put it right around the time of the war." The war. Everyone in the galaxy knew about the human-Zenthari war. It had been the bloodiest conflict in known history. The humans had fought like wild animals, refusing to surrender even when it was clear they could not win. In the end, the Galactic Coalition had been forced to destroy every human world to stop them. It was a dark chapter that most preferred not to talk about, but this ship changed everything. According to all records, humans had been primitive. Their ships were small and weak. They used simple weapons and basic technology. This massive vessel floating before them looked nothing like the human ships in their history books. "Sir, I'm detecting power readings from inside the ship," Dr. Thess said. Her voice was barely a whisper. "It's not dead. Something is still running in there." Korath felt his heart skip a beat. "That's impossible. Humans have been extinct for 2 centuries. "The readings don't lie, sir. There's definitely power flowing through that ship. A lot of power." Korath stared at the massive vessel. Standard protocol said they should report this find to Fleet Command and wait for orders. But this was the discovery of a lifetime. If this ship really was human, and if it contained working technology, it could change everything they knew about the extinct species. "Sir, what are your orders?" asked Lieutenant Ben Hayes from the weapons station. Korath made his decision. "Prepare a boarding party. We're going inside." Dr. Thess looked shocked. "Sir, that might not be wise. We don't know what's in there. If it really is a human ship—" "The humans are dead, Doctor," Korath said firmly. "They can't hurt us anymore. Besides, think of what we might learn. This could be the greatest archaeological find in galactic history." The boarding party consisted of 8 Zenthari soldiers and Dr. Thess. They wore full battle armor and carried the best weapons their technology could provide. As their shuttle approached the massive ship, Korath watched from the Dark Talon's bridge. The human ship had docking bays along its sides. The shuttle pilot, Sergeant Rick Stone, guided them toward what looked like a main entrance. As they got closer, they could see that the docking bay doors were sealed tight. "The doors are locked, sir," Stone reported. "But I'm reading atmosphere on the other side. Someone or something is keeping the air in there fresh." Dr. Thess ran her scanners over the doors. "I can cut through with our plasma torches, but it will take time." "Do it," Korath ordered. It took nearly an hour to cut through the thick metal doors. When they finally broke through, the boarding party found themselves in a massive chamber that could hold dozens of fighter ships. But the bay was empty except for strange equipment they did not recognize. The walls were covered with symbols and writing in human language. Lights ran along the ceiling, but they were dim and cast long shadows across the floor. The air was breathable, which was strange since the ship had been floating in space for 200 years. "The atmosphere is perfect," Dr. Thess reported. "Oxygen, nitrogen, all the right levels for human life. How is that possible after all this time?" The boarding party moved deeper into the ship. The corridors were wide and tall, built for beings much larger than the average Xanthari. Everything was clean and well-maintained, as if the ship had been abandoned yesterday instead of 2 centuries ago. They found rooms filled with equipment they could not identify. Some chambers contained what looked like weapons, but they were unlike anything in galactic databases. Other rooms held machines that hummed with quiet power, their purpose unknown. "Sir, you need to see this," called Corporal Amy Price from up ahead. The team gathered around her. She was standing in front of a large wall display that showed star charts. But these were not normal charts. They showed the entire galaxy with detailed information about every major world and space route. Some of the information was clearly recent, updated long after humans were supposed to be extinct. "How do they have current star charts?" Dr. Thess whispered. "This information is less than 50 years old." Before anyone could answer, Sergeant Stone called out from another corridor. "You all need to see this right now." They followed his voice to a massive chamber at the heart of the ship. The room was circular and filled with strange blue light. In the center stood a platform with what looked like a command chair. Above it, holographic displays showed images and data streaming past. Too fast to read. But what made everyone stop and stare was the name written across the far wall in letters 3 meters tall. USS Liberty. "Liberty," Dr. Thess read aloud. "That's not in any of our databases." Korath felt a chill run down his spine. According to everything they knew, humans had been wiped out completely. Every ship destroyed, every colony burned, every trace of their civilization erased. Yet here was a human vessel that was not only intact but still powered and running. "Sir, I'm picking up massive energy readings from deeper in the ship," Dr. Thess reported. "Whatever powers this thing, it's big, really big." As if responding to her words, the lights in the chamber suddenly grew brighter. The holographic displays changed, showing new images and data. Then, without warning, a sound echoed through the ship that made everyone freeze. It was a voice, a human voice, speaking in clear galactic standard language. Motion detected in restricted areas. Security. "Protocols activating. Please identify yourselves." The boarding party raised their weapons, but there was nothing to shoot at. The voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "This is impossible," Dr. Thess breathed. "Humans are extinct. They've been dead for 200 years. The voice spoke. Again. And this time there was something different about it. Something that made Korath's blood turn to ice. "Incorrect. Death is merely a temporary condition. Welcome aboard the USS Liberty. You are now guests of the United Earth Space Navy." On the Dark Talon, Korath watched his boarding team's life signs spike with fear. Whatever they had found on that ship, it was not what anyone expected. The humans, it seemed, had left behind more than just empty worlds and broken dreams. They had left behind something that was still very much alive. The voice that spoke from the ship's walls was calm and steady, like someone giving a weather report. But the words it said made the boarding party's blood freeze in their veins. "I am Captain Jake Morrison, commanding officer of the USS Liberty. You are currently trespassing in human territory. Please state your business here. Dr. Thess looked around the empty chamber, her scanner showing no life signs except for the boarding party. "There's no one here," she whispered to Sergeant Stone. "The voice has to be a recording." "Negative," the voice replied, clearly hearing her words. "I am very much present, though perhaps not in the way you expect. Your scanning equipment is quite primitive by current standards." The holographic displays around the command chair flickered and changed. New images appeared showing the dark Talon hanging in space outside. The view was so clear it was like looking through a window. "Your ship is Zenthari Design Military Class," the voice continued. "Captain Vex Korath commanding, if my records are correct. You've come a long way from home, Captain." On the Dark Talon's bridge, Korath felt his heart skip a beat. How did this thing know his name? He grabbed his communication device. Boarding. "Party. Report. What's happening in there?" Before his team could answer, the voice spoke again, and this time it came through the Dark Talon's own speakers. "Hello, Captain Korath. I've been monitoring your communications since you entered this system. Your technology makes that quite easy to do." Korath's crew looked around in shock. Their communication systems were heavily encrypted and protected. By the best security the Zenthari military could provide, no one should be able to break through their defenses. "What are you?" Korath demanded. "I told you, I'm Captain Jake Morrison, though I suppose I should be more specific. I'm what you might call an artificial intelligence, created from the mind and memories of the original Captain Morrison. I am him, and he is me, preserved in quantum matrices that your people don't yet understand." The boarding party watched as the holographic displays showed new images. These were pictures of humans, thousands of them, all looking healthy and alive. But the timestamps on the images showed they were taken recently, long after humans were supposed to be extinct. "This is impossible," Dr. Thess said. "Humans are gone. We destroyed them all during the war." "You destroyed our bodies," Morrison's voice replied. "But humanity has always been more than just flesh and blood. We are ideas, dreams, knowledge, and will. Those things are much harder to kill." The lights in the Liberty began to pulse with a steady rhythm, like a giant heartbeat. Throughout the massive ship, systems that had been dormant for centuries started to wake up. In the engine rooms, massive reactors hummed to life. In the hangar bays, fighter ships that looked nothing like old human designs began powering up their systems. On distant worlds across the galaxy, other alien governments detected the sudden energy burst from the Sol system. Warning signals flashed on screens as sensors picked up power readings unlike anything they had ever seen. Fleet Admiral Sarah Blake of the Zenthari High Command was in her office when the alert came through. The energy signature was so strong, it lit up sensors across 3 sectors. "What is that?" she demanded as her staff gathered around the display screens. "Unknown, Admiral," replied her aide, Commander Lisa Ward. "The energy burst came from the Sol system. No one is supposed to be there." Admiral Blake studied the readings. The power levels were enormous, bigger than anything their best battleships could produce. "Send a message to all fleet commanders. I want 3 battle groups moving toward Sol. Immediately." Meanwhile, in the trade halls of the Velkari homeworld, Director Amy Cross was meeting with the Trade Council when the news reached them. The Velkari were merchants and traders who cared more about profit than politics, but even they knew the danger of unknown military technology. "If there's a new power rising in the galaxy, we need to know about it," Cross told the Council. "Our trade routes depend on stable governments. Whatever is happening in the Sol system could affect business across dozens of sectors. On the psychic world of Ethon Prime, Oracle Lisa Stone felt the disturbance like a physical blow. The Ethons were powerful telepaths who could sense thoughts and emotions across vast distances. But when Stone tried to probe toward the Sol system, she hit a wall of mental static that hurt to touch. "There's something wrong," she told her fellow oracles. "I can sense a mind out there, but it's not like anything I've felt before. It thinks too fast, knows too much. It's like trying to read the thoughts of a star." Back on the Liberty, Captain Morrison's AI was explaining the situation to the increasingly nervous boarding party. "For 200 years, this ship has been waiting and watching," he said. "We've been collecting information, learning about your governments and your people. We know about your trade routes, your military strengths, your political secrets. We know things about your own species that you've forgotten." The holographic displays showed star charts and data files. The aliens recognized some of the information as highly classified military secrets that should have been impossible for outsiders to access. "The Liberty was humanity's final project," Morrison continued. "When we realized the war was lost, our best scientists worked around the clock to create something that could survive our extinction. Not a weapon of revenge, but a seed of rebirth." "Doctor?" Thess stared at the impossible technology surrounding them. "What do you want from us?" "Want?" Morrison seemed amused by the question. "I want what I've always wanted. Peace, prosperity, and the chance for all species to reach their full potential. The same things any good officer wants for his people." The ship's systems continued to come online. In the depths of the Liberty, machines that had been sleeping for centuries began to move. Manufacturing systems started producing new equipment. Computer cores that contained the preserved minds of humanity's greatest thinkers began to network together. "You're scaring them, Jake." A new voice joined the conversation, this one female. "Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Emma Foster, formerly Chief Science Officer of the Earth Fleet." More voices followed. "Commander Steve Rogers, Military Tactics. Professor Janet Adams, Cultural Studies. Engineer Peter Clark, Advanced Systems." The boarding party realized, with growing horror, that they weren't talking to one artificial intelligence. They were talking to dozens of them, maybe hundreds, an entire crew of digital humans, all working together with perfect coordination. "We're not your enemies," Morrison said gently. "We never were. The war happened because your governments were, afraid of what humanity might become. They were right to be afraid, but not for the reasons they thought." The Liberty began to move. After 2 centuries of drifting in the outer Sol system, the massive ship fired up its engines and started heading toward the inner planets. But these weren't normal engines. The ship seemed to bend space around itself, moving faster than physics should allow. "Where are you going?" Captain Korath demanded from his bridge. "Home first," Morrison replied. "I want to see Earth again. Even if it's just a burned rock now, then we have some visits to make. It's time the galaxy learned the truth about what really happened during the war." The boarding party watched helplessly as blast doors sealed around them. They weren't prisoners exactly, but they weren't free to leave either. "Don't worry," Morrison said. "You'll be our guests for a while. Consider it a learning experience. By the time this is over, you'll understand what humanity really is, and what we're capable of becoming." The USS Liberty, humanity's greatest achievement, was awake and moving. And across the galaxy, the powers that had destroyed Earth 2 centuries ago were about to learn that some things are impossible to kill. The news of the awakened human ship spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Within hours of the Liberty's movement, every major government had emergency meetings running around the clock. The impossible had happened. Humanity had returned from the dead. Admiral Rachel Ward stood before the Valkyrie Defense Council, her usually calm demeanor cracking under pressure. "The energy readings are off our charts," she reported. "This single ship is putting out more power than our entire home fleet." On the Zenthari homeworld, Fleet Admiral Sarah Blake was dealing with her own crisis. 3 battle groups were racing toward Sol, but their fastest ships would still take days to reach the system. "What do we know about this vessel?" Blake demanded. "Commander." Lisa Ward pulled up what little intelligence they had gathered. "It calls itself the USS Liberty. Our records show no ship by that name in any human fleet roster from the war. The design is completely unknown." "How is that possible? We documented every human ship we destroyed." "That's what makes this so frightening, Admiral. Either our intelligence was wrong or the humans had technology we never knew about." Meanwhile, Commander Ryan Torres of the Zephyrian Collective was coordinating with his hive mind commanders. The Zephyrians thought and acted as one massive organism, which made them excellent at coordinating large fleets, but even their collective intelligence was struggling to understand what they were facing. "The ship's movement patterns make no sense," Torres reported to the Central Mind. "It's not using any propulsion system we recognize. Space itself seems to bend around it." The ancient Korathan Empire had the oldest records in the galaxy, dating back thousands of years. War Master Alex Kane stood in their great archives, searching through files that most species had forgotten existed. "There are gaps in our records from the final days of the war," Kane told his war council. "Entire human colonies that simply vanished without a trace. We assumed they were destroyed, but what if they weren't?" As the various alien fleets converged on the Sol system, the Liberty was making its way toward Earth. The planet that had once been humanity's homeworld was now a dead rock. Its atmosphere burned away and its surface turned to glass. Captain Morrison's AI stood in the ship's observation deck, looking down at the ruined world through holographic displays. Though he was artificial, the sorrow in his voice was very real. "Look what they did to you," he whispered to the dead planet below. "But you're not truly gone. We carry you with us now." Dr. Emma Foster's AI joined him at the viewing station. "The biodiversity archives are intact, Jake. Every species that lived on Earth, every plant and animal preserved down to the genetic level. We can bring it all back if we want to." "In time," Morrison replied. "First, we have other business to attend to." The Liberty's sensors had detected the approaching alien fleets, ships from 5 different species, all working together for the first time in decades. It should have been a moment of galactic unity, but Morrison knew they were only united by fear. "Sir," called Commander Steve Rogers from the tactical station, "the lead elements of the Zenthari fleet will be here in 6 hours. The Valkyrie ships are 12 hours behind them. And the others? Zephyrian swarm ships are 18 hours out. The Korathan dreadnoughts are taking their time. They won't arrive for 2 days." Morrison nodded. "Let them come. It's time they learned what we've become." As the first alien ships entered the Sol system, their crews expected to find a single human vessel, possibly damaged or barely functional. What they found instead defied all logic. The Liberty was surrounded by a cloud of smaller ships that seemed to appear from nowhere. Sleek fighters and support vessels moved in perfect formation around the massive carrier, but these weren't normal ships. They flickered in and out of normal space like ghosts. "How many ships are we looking at?" Captain Vex Korath asked from his position with the boarding party inside the Liberty. "That depends on how you count," Morrison replied. In normal space, about 200. But we're not limited to normal space anymore. The leading Zenthari battle group, commanded by Admiral Blake herself, tried to maintain a safe distance while studying the human formation. Their sensors kept giving conflicting readings. "The smaller ships aren't showing up consistently on our scans," reported the sensor officer. "Sometimes they're there, sometimes they're not." Admiral Blake studied the tactical display. "Are they using some kind of cloaking technology?" "No, sir. It's something else. They seem to be shifting between different dimensions of space." As the alien fleets watched, the Liberty began to demonstrate its capabilities. Without warning, the massive ship simply vanished from normal space, reappearing several light minutes away in less than a second. "That's impossible," breathed Commander Ward. "Nothing can move that fast without using hyperspace, and there was no hyperspace signature." The Liberty's communication systems activated, broadcasting on all frequencies so every ship in the system could hear. "To all vessels currently in the Sol system," Morrison's voice was calm and professional, "you are in violation of human territory. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions." Admiral Blake opened a channel to respond. "This is Fleet Admiral Sarah Blake of the Zenthari Defense Force. Humans have been extinct for 200 years. This system was declared abandoned territory by Galactic Treaty." "I'm afraid your information is incorrect, Admiral," Morrison replied. "Humanity never truly left this system. We've been here all along, watching and learning. The question is, what are you and your allies planning to do about it?" The alien fleets found themselves in an impossible situation. They had come expecting to fight a single ship with outdated technology. Instead, they faced a force that seemed to operate outside the normal laws of physics. Captain Amy Price, part of the boarding party still trapped inside the Liberty, watched the tactical displays with growing amazement. "How are you doing this? The technology you're showing is centuries ahead of anything we have." "Centuries?" Dr. Foster's AI laughed. "Try millennia. When humanity faced extinction, we didn't just try to survive. We tried to evolve. What you're seeing is the result of 200 years of unrestricted scientific development." Engineer Peter Clark's AI joined the conversation. "Every limitation you think exists in physics, we found ways around. Faster than light travel without hyperspace, matter-energy conversion, dimensional manipulation. These are just tools to us now, as if to prove the point." One of the Liberty's escort ships suddenly split into 5 identical copies of itself, each one solid and real. Then they merged back together as if nothing had happened. "Impossible," whispered Dr. Thess. "You can't duplicate matter like that." "You can if you understand that matter and energy are just different states of information," Clark explained. "Everything in the universe is data. Once you know how to read and write that data, the possibilities become endless." The alien fleets tried to coordinate their response, but they quickly discovered another disturbing fact. The Liberty wasn't just monitoring their communications, it was actively interfering with them. "Admiral, we're losing contact with the other fleet groups," reported the communication officer on Blake's flagship. "How is that possible?" "Our encryption is military grade." "They're not breaking our encryption, sir. They're rewriting it. Every time we try to send a message, it gets changed into something else." Across the gathered fleets, the same thing was happening. Orders became poetry. Tactical reports turned into recipes for human food. Battle plans were replaced with shopping lists. Then the Liberty began broadcasting again, but this time it wasn't Captain Morrison's voice. It was music, old human songs that most aliens had never heard before. The melodies were strange but beautiful, and they seemed to bypass normal hearing to speak directly to the mind. "What is this?" demanded Admiral Blake. "It's called Amazing Grace," Morrison explained. "A very old human song about redemption and forgiveness. We thought you might appreciate the message." While the music played, the Liberty and its escort ships began moving again. But instead of attacking or retreating, they spread out through the system in a complex pattern that seemed random but clearly wasn't. "What are they doing?" Commander Torres asked his collective mind. The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Lisa Hayes, the Ethon psychic who had been monitoring the situation from her homeworld, suddenly gasped in shock. "They're not positioning for battle," she reported to her government. "They're building something, some kind of massive structure that spans the entire system." As the alien fleets watched in growing terror, the human ships began to work together in ways that defied understanding. Energy beams passed between vessels, creating a network of connections that stretched from the inner planets to the outer edge of the system. "What you're witnessing," Morrison explained to the captive boarding party, "is the resurrection of Sol. We're going to bring this system back to life, and there's nothing your fleets can do to stop us." The hunt had begun, but the roles of hunter and prey were not what anyone expected. The Liberty moved through space like a ghost ship, passing through the combined alien fleets as if they didn't exist. When Admiral Blake ordered her ships to open fire, their weapons simply passed through empty space where the human vessel had been moments before. "Target has phased out of normal space," reported the weapons officer. "We can't hit what isn't there." But the humans weren't hiding. They were making a statement. The Liberty reappeared directly in the center of the alien formation, so close that its massive hull filled the view screens of a dozen warships. Yet none of their proximity alarms had triggered. "How did they get so close without being detected?" Blake demanded. Before anyone could answer, every screen in the fleet began displaying the same image. It was Captain Morrison, but now he appeared, in the crisp uniform of a naval officer, standing on what looked like the bridge of an active starship. "Ladies and gentlemen of the Galactic Coalition," Morrison began, his voice carrying clearly across all communication channels. "We need to talk." The various fleet commanders tried to cut the transmission, but their communication systems no longer responded to their commands. Morrison continued speaking as if he had all the time in the universe. 200 years ago, your governments decided that humanity was too dangerous to exist. You hunted us across the galaxy, burned our worlds, and killed our people. You told yourselves it was necessary for galactic peace. The image changed, showing historical footage from the Human-Xanthari War. But these weren't the sanitized records that had been shown to the public. These were raw battle recordings that showed the true brutality of what had happened. Admiral Blake watched in horror as the screens showed Xanthari ships bombarding civilian colonies. She had been taught that humans were the aggressors, that they had forced the Coalition's hand. But the evidence before her eyes told a different story. "This is propaganda," Blake said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Is it?" Morrison asked, somehow hearing her words across the void. Computer display Admiral Blake's personal records from the Battle of New Geneva. Blake's blood turned to ice. The Battle of New Geneva was classified at the highest levels. No one outside the Xanthari High Command should have known about it, let alone have access to the battle records. But there it was on every screen in the fleet, footage from Blake's own ship as she followed orders to destroy a human medical station. She could hear her own voice giving the commands, see the medical ships trying to evacuate wounded civilians. "Stop this," Blake whispered. "I'm sorry, Admiral." But the truth can't be stopped once it starts, Morrison replied. Your people deserve to know what was done in their name. Across the galaxy, the transmission was being picked up by civilian communication networks. On Zenthari homeworld, citizens watched in shock as their military heroes were revealed to have committed war crimes. Similar scenes played out on every member world of the Coalition. Director Amy Cross of the Velkari Trade Council tried to shut down the broadcast networks, but the signals seemed to be coming from everywhere at once. It's impossible, she told her technicians. The transmission is bypassing our entire infrastructure. On Ethon Prime, Oracle Lisa Stone was experiencing something far worse than embarrassing revelations. She was feeling the emotions of every human who had died during the war, their fear, their pain, their desperate hope that someone would remember them. It all flowed through her mind like a river of sorrow. Make it stop, she begged her fellow oracles. I can feel them all. Every single human who died. They're all still there, preserved in that ship somehow. But Morrison wasn't finished. The image on the screens changed again, this time showing the present day. Military installations, government buildings, secret research facilities, all seen. From impossible angles as if the cameras were floating invisibly through secured areas. For 2 centuries we've been watching you, Morrison explained. Learning about your cultures, your technologies, your secrets. We know about the corruption in your governments, the lies you tell your people, the deals you make in dark rooms. Commander Ryan Torres of the Zephyrian Collective tried to coordinate a response through the hive mind, but he discovered that their normally perfect mental network was being flooded with information. Every secret the Collective had ever kept was being broadcast to every member of their species at once. The humans have infiltrated our thoughts, Torres reported in panic. They're in our minds somehow. Not in your minds, Morrison corrected. In your computers. Every network, every database, every digital system you've built in the last 200 years. We've been there from the beginning. Your technology evolved from research we shared with you before the war. Did you really think we wouldn't leave ourselves a way back in? The alien fleets found themselves completely helpless. Their weapons couldn't target the human ships. Their communications were compromised, and their deepest secrets were being revealed to their own people. But Morrison wasn't done with his revelations. The screens changed once more, showing something that made every alien leader's blood run cold. It was a map of the galaxy, but not as they knew it. This map showed hidden installations, secret bases, and facilities that officially didn't exist. These are your black sites, Morrison said calmly. Places where you conduct illegal experiments, torture prisoners, and develop weapons banned by galactic treaty. Should we visit them next? War Master Alex Kane of the Corathan Empire was watching from his flagship when his communications officer turned pale. Sir, we're receiving direct transmissions on our most secure channels. Channels that only you should have access to. Kane took the communication device with shaking hands. The voice he heard was impossible. It was his own voice, but speaking words he had never said. Hello, Alex, his own voice said to him. We need to discuss your secret weapon projects, the ones you've hidden from the other coalition members. Meanwhile, on the Liberty itself, the boarding party was witnessing something that challenged everything they thought they knew about reality. The ship's corridors had changed, expanding into vast spaces that shouldn't have been able to fit inside. The hull. The ship is bigger on the inside than the outside, Dr. Thess said in amazement. That's impossible. Impossible is a word we stopped using a long time ago, replied Professor Janet Adams. Her AI construct appeared as a middle-aged woman in a simple lab coat. When you can manipulate space and time at the quantum level, size becomes a matter of choice. They were led to what Morrison called the Memorial Hall. It was a vast chamber filled with billions of points of light, each one representing a human who had died during the war. But these weren't just memorials. They were actual, preserved consciousnesses sleeping until the day they could be given new forms. Every human who ever lived is here, Morrison explained. Their minds, their memories, their souls, if you believe in such things. Death was just an inconvenience we learned to overcome. Captain Vex Korath stared at the impossible sight. "You're saying all of humanity is aboard this ship?" "This ship and others like it," Morrison confirmed. "The Liberty was just the first. We've been building a fleet for 2 centuries, preparing for the day when we could reclaim our place in the galaxy." As if summoned by his words, new contacts began appearing on the alien fleet scanners. Ships materialized out of nowhere, each one as massive and advanced as the Liberty. Within minutes, the alien forces found themselves outnumbered 10 to 1. But still, the humans made no aggressive moves. They simply waited, surrounding the alien fleets like shepherds watching over sheep. "What do you want from us?" Admiral Blake finally asked, her voice defeated. Morrison's image appeared one last time on their screens. Behind him stood the ghostly figures of hundreds of other humans, scientists, soldiers, diplomats, and ordinary people who had died in the war. "We want what we've always wanted," Morrison said simply. "Peace, understanding, and the chance for all species to reach their full potential. The question is, are you ready to listen to what we have to say?" The alien fleets hung motionless in space, surrounded by impossible human technology and faced with the weight of their own history. The galaxy was about to change forever, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. Morrison made his final announcement to the galaxy. "In 24 hours, representatives from all coalition governments will meet us at Nexus Prime. We're going to have a conversation about the future. A real conversation this time, with no lies and no hidden agendas." The revelation had begun, and there was no turning back. The great council chambers of Nexus Prime had never seen anything like it. Representatives from every major government in the galaxy sat in tense silence, waiting for the impossible meeting to begin. Outside the massive station, the Liberty and her escort fleet hung in space like sleeping giants. Fleet Admiral Sarah Blake sat with the Zenthari delegation, her hands shaking as she reviewed the files Morrison had sent them. Every war crime, every cover-up, every lie her government had told for 2 centuries was documented in perfect detail. "How did they get this information?" whispered Commander Lisa Ward. Blake didn't answer. She was staring at footage of herself as a young officer, following orders to destroy human refugee ships. She had buried those memories so deep that she had almost convinced herself they were nightmares. Across the chamber, Director Amy Cross was dealing with her own crisis. The Velkari Trade Council was in chaos as their people learned about the illegal weapons deals and slave trading operations that had funded their expansion across the galaxy. "Our stock prices have crashed on every world," Cross muttered to her aide. 3 trading houses have already declared bankruptcy. The Zephyrian Collective was suffering even worse damage. Commander Ryan Torres sat motionless as his hive mind struggled to process the revelation that their perfect unity was built on lies and manipulation. For the first time in their species' history, Individual Zephyrians were beginning to think for themselves, but it was the ancient Korathan Empire that faced the greatest shock. War Master Alex Kane had learned that his people's proud military tradition was founded on genocide and terror. Entire species had been wiped out by Korathan fleets, their histories erased from all records. 5,000 years of lies, Kane said, quietly. How do we recover from this? The answer came as the chamber's main doors opened. Captain Morrison walked in, but this wasn't the holographic projection they had been seeing. This was a physical form, solid and real, dressed in the crisp uniform of the United Earth Space Navy. Behind him came others, Dr. Emma Foster, Commander Steve Rogers, Professor Janet Adams, Engineer Peter Clark, dozens of humans who should have been dead for centuries. They moved with the calm confidence of people who had faced the worst possible fate and overcome it. "Thank you all for coming," Morrison said as he took his place at the center of the chamber. "I know this isn't easy for any of you. Learning that everything you believed about the war was wrong is never pleasant." Admiral Blake stood up, her voice shaking with anger and shame. "You can't just waltz in here and demand we answer for crimes committed 200 years ago. Most of us weren't even born then." "You're right," Morrison replied calmly. "You weren't responsible for starting the war, but you were responsible for perpetuating the lies that kept it going. Every time you taught your children that humans were monsters, every time you celebrated the anniversary of our extinction, you made the choice to honor mass murder." The chamber erupted in angry voices as delegates tried to defend their governments and their histories. But Morrison raised his hand, and somehow his simple gesture brought instant silence. "However," he continued, "we're not here to punish you. We're here to offer you something better." The lights dimmed, and holographic displays filled the air above the delegates. They showed images of worlds being terraformed, cities being built, and technologies beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. "For 2 centuries, we've been preparing for this moment," Morrison explained. "Not planning revenge, but designing a better future. We've solved problems that have plagued galactic civilization for millennia. Poverty, disease, resource scarcity, environmental destruction, these are all things of the past if you're willing to work with us." Dr. Foster stepped forward, her voice warm and friendly despite the tense atmosphere. "We've developed medical technologies that can extend lifespans to thousands of years, not just for humans, but for all species. Cancer, genetic disorders, even aging itself, we can cure them all." Professor Adams added her own revelation. "We've also solved the problem of faster-than-light communication, real-time conversations across the galaxy, instant coordination between worlds, the end of the isolation that has kept our species apart." Engineer Clark gestured to the holographic displays showing massive construction projects. "And we can build infrastructure that makes current space stations look like toys. Orbital habitats that can house billions, ring worlds around stars, even artificial galaxies if needed." The alien delegates stared at the impossible technologies being offered to them. It was everything their civilizations had dreamed of achieving, handed to them by the very species they had tried to exterminate. "What's the catch?" asked Director Cross. "Nothing this good comes free." Morrison smiled, and for the first time since the meeting began, it was a genuinely warm expression. "The catch is that you have to be worthy of it. These technologies could be used to create paradise or to wage war on a scale that would make the human-Zenthari conflict look like a small disagreement." Commander Rogers took over the presentation. "We're offering you a choice. Join us in building A new kind of galactic civilization, one based on cooperation instead of competition, truth instead of lies, and growth instead of destruction. Or continue down the path you've been following and face the consequences. And if we refuse? War Master, Kane asked. Then you continue as you are, Morrison replied. But without access to human technology, your civilizations will stagnate and eventually collapse. We won't attack you or invade your worlds. We'll simply move beyond you. The holographic displays changed, showing images of human ships departing the galaxy entirely. New worlds in distant galaxies, civilizations that spanned multiple dimensions, technologies that made interstellar travel look primitive. You see, we're not limited to this galaxy anymore, Professor Adams explained. Space and time are just addresses to us now. If this part of the universe isn't ready for what we're offering, we can find places that are. Oracle Lisa Stone of the Ethon Collective had been silent throughout the meeting, her psychic abilities overwhelmed by the sheer mental presence of the resurrected humans. Finally, she found her voice. "I can feel them," she whispered. "All of them. Billions of human minds, all working together in perfect harmony. But it's not like our hive minds or collective consciousness. Each one is still individual, still unique. How is that possible?" Dr. Foster smiled at the question. "We learned something during our time in digital form. True unity doesn't require the loss of self. In fact, it requires the opposite. The more individual and unique each voice becomes, the richer the harmony." Morrison stepped forward again, his expression serious but hopeful. "We're offering you the chance to join that harmony, not to lose yourselves, but to become more than you ever thought possible. Your species, your cultures, your individual identities, they would all be preserved and enhanced." The chamber fell silent as the delegates processed what they were being offered. It wasn't conquest or submission they faced, but transformation into something greater than they had ever imagined. Admiral Blake was the first to speak. We know you won't use these technologies to control us, to make us into slaves or puppets?" "Because control through force is inefficient," Morrison replied. "Why waste energy dominating people when you can inspire them to willingly become their best selves? A garden grows better with care than with chains." Commander Torres, speaking for the fragmented Zephyrian collective, asked the next question. "What would happen to our existing governments? Our ways of life?" "They would evolve," Commander Rogers answered. "Gradually, naturally, at whatever pace your people choose. We're not interested in revolution. We prefer transformation." Engineer Clark added, "Think of it as upgrading your civilization's operating system. The core functions remain the same, but everything works better." Over the next several hours, the humans answered every question, addressed every concern, and demonstrated technologies that seemed like magic to the alien delegates. They showed how poverty could be eliminated through matter-energy conversion, how conflicts could be resolved through perfect information sharing, and how every species could expand beyond their homeworlds without depleting resources. Finally, Morrison made his closing statement. "We're not asking for an answer today. Take time to discuss this with your people. Show them what we've shown you. Let them decide what kind of future they want." As the meeting ended, the alien delegates found themselves in an impossible position. They could reject humanity's offer and watch their civilizations slowly fade into obsolescence, or they could accept it and become part of something beyond their current understanding. In the months that followed, the galaxy transformed in ways no one had expected. Some governments collapsed as their people learned the truth about their histories. Others embraced the chance for redemption and renewal. A few tried to fight against the changes, but found themselves increasingly isolated as their neighbors moved toward the human alliance. The Liberty became the flagship of a new kind of civilization that spanned dimensions rather than just star systems. Human digital consciousness worked alongside alien organic minds to solve problems that had seemed impossible. Children of a dozen species learned together in schools that taught both biological and artificial intelligence.